The legend of the fourth Wizard King. Why does it not appear in history? In a distant land where the mountains are lost in the clouds and the deserts embrace the horizon lived Artaban, a wise man dedicated to the study of stars and ancient prophecies. One night, as he watched the sky, something extraordinary caught his attention. A new, bright star, which seemed to illuminate the sky with a divine purpose. If you like stories and tales, subscribe to our channel to continue enjoying legends and stories. His heart was filled with joy as he knew that that star announced the birth of the promised king, the Messiah who would bring hope to the world. Artaban, excited, prepared to join three other wizards, Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthasar, with whom he had agreed to meet at a strategic point to undertake the trip to Belen together. But before leaving, he carefully selected three gifts worthy of the king he was going to meet. A sapphire of a blue as deep as the night sky, a ruby that shone like fire, and a perfect white pearl, a symbol of purity and peace. With these treasures in hand and his heart full of faith, he began his journey to the meeting point, confident that the star would be his guide. As he crossed a village on the edge of the desert, Artaban noticed a group of people gathered together next to a man lying on the ground. The stranger seemed to be on the verge of death, with his pale skin and a fever that consumed his strength. As he approached, Artaban could hear the worried murmurs of the villagers. "What's going on here?" he asked seriously. "The man is seriously ill," a woman replied. "No one in the village has the means to pay for a treatment, and the healers will not come without a compensation." Artaban looked at the man who was barely breathing. His heart was filled with compassion, but also with concern. He knew that every minute lost meant that the other magicians could not wait for him. Even so, his nature did not allow him to ignore the suffering in front of him. After a moment of reflection, he spoke with determination. "I will help this man." He helped to transfer the patient to a nearby city where they found a healer. Once there, he personally supervised that the man was admitted and that the necessary treatments began. In the end, he approached the healer, took the sapphire out of his bag, which shone like a piece of night sky, and gave it as payment, saying, "This gem covers all the expenses necessary. Make sure you receive the best care." Everyone was stunned, observing the brilliant jewel that exceeded any wealth they had seen in value. Finally, the healer took the precious stone with trembling hands and left. With the man out of danger, Artaban resumed his path, but now with a concern in his heart. The star was still shining in the sky, guiding him to Bethlehem, but he knew that his delay was too great. He rode fast, hoping to reach his companions, but when he reached the meeting point, the other magicians had already left. Artaban continued his journey full of determination. Although he could not meet the other magicians, the star in the sky still guided him to the west. His mission was clear, to reach the Messiah, but the path was full of challenges that would once again test his compassion and sacrifice. Upon arriving in a bustling city, Artaban noticed that something was not right. The atmosphere was full of tension, and the faces of the inhabitants reflected fear. He found out that the city was under the control of an evil king, known for his cruelty. One of his most ruthless tasks was to capture children to sell them as slaves. Artaban, always moved by justice and kindness, decided to investigate. He walked through the streets until he found a square guarded by soldiers. In the center, a group of children were locked up in a rudimentary corral, crying and hugging each other. Around, some merchants discussed the prices, while the soldiers watched indifferently. Artaban's heart broke when he saw the scene. He knew he could not stay with his arms crossed. If you like stories and tales, subscribe to our channel to continue enjoying legends and stories. He remembered the ruby that he still carried with him, the second of the gifts destined for the Messiah. He looked at the bright gem and then at the children. "This is not a coincidence," he said. "God has put me here to intervene." Artaban approached the officer in charge, who looked at him with distrust. "What are you looking for here, foreigner?" asked the man, frowning. "I have come to talk to you," Artaban replied calmly. "I want to buy the freedom of these children." The officer let go of a laugh. "Buy their freedom? Do you know how much they are worth in the market? This is not a matter for a traveler." Artaban did not hesitate. He opened his bag and took out the ruby. The stone of a deep red reflected the sunlight as it burned inside. Seeing her, the officer's eyes opened at the same time. With this you can buy more than you would earn by selling those children, Artaban said, extending the gem. But I want everyone to be free, without exception. The officer looked at the jewel, then at Artaban and, finally, at the children. His greed surpassed any loyalty to the king. Without saying a word, he snatched the ruby from Artaban's hands and shouted to the soldiers, "Release the prisoners." One by one the children were released. Some ran to Artaban hugging him between tears. Others, too scared to speak, simply looked at him with gratitude. But the release of the children was only the first step. Artaban knew that they would not be safe as long as they remained in the city. The soldiers could change their minds, or the king himself could seek to punish them. That is why he decided to take them to a safe place. He gathered the little ones and organized a discreet exit at dawn. The journey was long and exhausting, but Artaban did not let fatigue or fear stop him. During the journey he consoled the children. He told them stories about the Star of Bethlehem and the Messiah who had been born. Although we have not found it yet, he told them, its light is in us when we take care and protect the most vulnerable. Finally, after days of travel, Artaban arrived at a village where he had pious friends. The children were welcomed by kind and compassionate families. Artaban made sure that everyone was safe before continuing on his own. The rescue of the children and their transfer to a safe place cost Artaban weeks of delay. By then he knew that the other magicians would have already arrived in Bethlehem and presented their offerings to the child. However, far from feeling defeated, Artaban found comfort in the peace he had brought to the children. As he resumed his journey, with the white pearl still carefully kept, he reflected on his purpose. Although he had not followed the straight path he had planned, each detour seemed to have a deeper meaning. The star still guided me, he thought, and as it continues, I am fulfilling my mission. Weeks later, Artaban arrived on the outskirts of Bethlehem, a city that was boiling with rumors and tensions. As he entered the streets, he heard fragments of conversation about King Herod, a paranoid and cruel monarch obsessed with maintaining his power. In a square, a group of women cried inconsolably. Artaban stopped, unable to ignore his suffering. He approached one of them and asked him, "What happened here? Why are they crying?" Between sobbing, one of the women replied, "King Herod has ordered the death of all 2-year-old boys and boys. He says he is looking to eliminate a new king who threatens his throne." Artaban felt a knot in his stomach. Is the Messiah in danger? He thought. He looked at the sky, desperately looking for the star, but it had not appeared for days. He asked the villagers about a boy born under the star, but they all told him that the 2-year-old boys were dead or their parents had fled to save them. Artaban's heart sank. He confirmed his greatest fear. He had arrived too late. Sitting next to a well, he felt how frustration and fatigue took over him. He had given everything he had on the way, the sapphire, the ruby, his time and his energy. He only had the white pearl left, and he had not even been able to give it to the Messiah. But as he reflected, saying, "If I can't find the Messiah here, I'll keep looking for him. I won't give up." For several weeks he sought the Messiah, but he was unsuccessful until finally with a broken heart he decided to return to his land, very sad for not having been able to give up his offering to the Messiah. Approximately 30 years later, Artaban heard the news that a man named Jesus was performing miracles in Jerusalem. Artaban, already old and with his hair covered with reeds, took the white pearl, his last gift, and went to the city in the hope of finally meeting the man named Jesus. The trip lasted weeks, however. When he arrived, he discovered that Jesus had been condemned to die on a cross. Artaban, devastated, could not see Jesus alive, but he heard people talk about his miracles and his unjust crucifixion. If you like stories and tales, subscribe to our channel to continue enjoying legends and stories. As he wandered the streets, still clinging to the white pearl, Artaban met a group of prisoners who were about to be sold as slaves. A young woman, with tears in her eyes, begged him for help. Artaban, with a broken heart but faithful to his call, gave the white pearl to buy the freedom of the young woman and the other prisoners. When the gem changed hands, a powerful voice resounded inside him. "Your gifts have been received." Artaban looked up at the sky with tears in his eyes. Although he had never seen the Messiah face to face, he was convinced that his acts were part of God's plan. Artaban returned home. His body was tired, marked by the years and long journeys, but his spirit remained serene. Although he had not seen the Messiah in the way he had imagined, he knew that his life had had a purpose. Each act of kindness, each sacrifice, had been an offering. One night, as he rested in his room, a celestial light filled the place. It was a different light, warm and enveloping, which seemed to emanate peace. Artaban slowly incorporated himself, and a radiant figure appeared in front of him. It was Jesus risen, who illuminated the room with his presence. Jesus, with a smile full of love, leaned towards him and helped him get up. Artaban, my good and faithful servant, you have not failed. Everything you did for me. What you did for the little ones, for the hungry, for the sick and the captives, you did for me. Artaban, moved, let the tears fall freely. But Lord, why was my path so different from that of the other magicians? They found you in Bethlehem, while I spent my life looking for you. Jesus placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke tenderly. Each one has a unique path. The other magicians offered me gold, incense, and myrrh, gifts worthy of a king. But you, Artaban, offered me something even more precious, your love in action. You used the sapphire to save a life, the ruby to free the captives, and the pearl to rescue the needy. Your gifts came to me through them, and each act of kindness was a sample of my love in the world. Artaban felt that a weight disappeared from his heart. For the first time in years, his spirit found peace. Then my life was not in vain, he said with a soft voice. The room began to fill with indescribable peace, and Artaban felt his heart fill with joy. Jesus looked at him with infinite love and said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Now enter into the rest of your Lord." The celestial light enveloped Artaban, and with a calm smile he closed his eyes for the last time. His search was over, but his legacy lived in every life he touched with his kindness and in every soul that helped find hope. If you like this magical story, don't forget to like it and click on the subscribe button and join us in more magical tales. Each subscription encourages us to continue creating more magical adventures for you. We look forward to seeing you in the next story. Thanks for being part of this adventure.